Good day, and welcome to another in our seminar series. Today's seminar is presented by Dr. Wendy Purcell. Her topic is Pathways to Progress Towards a Fairer Society. Let me tell you about Dr. Purcell. She is professor and chair in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health and Justice at Rutgers University School of Public Health, where she is also an elected University Senator member of the Senate Executive Committee and co-chair of the University Structure and Governance Committee. She also co-chairs the Rutgers Health Climate Action Group and is deputy director of the Center for Climate Health and Healthcare, and is a member of the Rutgers Health Leadership Council and Teaching Excellence, where she co-chairs the Establishing Academy Group. In addition to being at Rutgers, Dr. Purcell is a visiting professor at University College London, Global Business School for Health, and is a fellow of the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges. She's a governing board member of the European University ELISA on the International Advisory Council of Al-Qura University, Saudi Arabia, and a member of the American Association of Universities and Colleges. Before joining Rutgers, Dr. Purcell led research and education on leadership and governance for transformational change as an academic research scholar with Harvard Chan School of Public Health at Harvard University. And that was between 2016 and 2022. She continues her association with the Harvard School as a visiting research scholar and lead instructor and chairs the Sustainable Tourism course. She is also President Emerita of Plymouth University in the UK, where she was from 2007 to 2015, and an Emeritus Professor of Biomedicine. Dr. Purcell is an accomplished author across fields in biomedical sciences, sustainability, higher education, and leadership. And her recent book, The Bloomsbury Handbook of Sustainability in Higher Education, An Agenda for Transformational Change, was published in 2022. She's also series editor for a number of higher education and SDG-related volumes and series, and particularly Higher Education and SDG 3, Good Health and Well-Being. She's co-editor-in-chief of the International Journal for Social Progress and serves on multiple editorial boards. Dr. Purcell's purpose lies in transforming lives through education and research in pursuit of social equity, the knowledge economy, and sustainable development. We look forward to her talk this morning. Dr. Purcell, welcome.
Thank you very much, Yonette, and thank you very much to IPSP for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here, and I really want to appreciate Margot, Yonette, and Joseph for all your help. So we have an opportunity to talk together about pathways to progress towards a fairer society. And I'm going to introduce to you some of our thinking from a range of global speakers, some of whom are with us in the audience, so welcome to you. And really, I think the first thing I want to say is to focus on that we're here and thinking that this is important, that what we do collectively, individually, is important. What we do here matters. And I just want us to sort of take a moment, because we've joined here together for this talk, for a number of talks in this series, because we care about making progress. We care about moving from here to there and this focus on betterment. So let's just kind of orientate ourselves and remind ourselves that what we do here matters. And the reason I say that is because, you know, never doubt that a small group of dedicated people here through IPSP can change the world. And indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And it's a difficult world that we're looking to make change for betterment, to make progress. It's a world that is I think defined by volatility and uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, so-called VUCA conditions. Some have even described them as hyper VUCA or super VUCA, that there is such volatility, such uncertainty, such complexity, such ambiguity that we are seeking to navigate. We're being buffeted by a whole suite of global megatrends, from technological change to loss of trust in organizations and institutions, forces of globalization and migration, inequities. There are just a whole suite of trends across the globe that are causing, I think, a real sense of VUCA, a real sense of disruption. Some of those are less visible, things like generational impacts. This is the first time in our history that we have 5 generations in the workforce. There are very different preferences. There are, I think we're seeing children with worse health outcomes and life choices than their parents. You know, there are real generational inequities. There's also a sense that we want to be seen and heard for our individual and personal needs, this focus on personalization. So when we talk about progress, we need to think about, what do we mean in terms of generational progress? What do we mean when we're talking about progress at the level of the individual? And of course, I think there is no talk now that would fail to comment on, this is moving too fast, that would fail to comment on on AI and digital. So this real sense that there is this disruption. Are we going to be master or drone? Are we going to be augmented or replaced? So this sense of progress, is this as an enabler, or are we looking at something that is going to disrupt again? So each year the World Economic Forum sits down and actually collates the risks that we're facing. And I think in 2026, there was this sense of a new world order emerging. Some forces which are driving us towards competition and competitiveness, others where we're looking to cooperate to drive resilience. So a very complicated global risks agenda. But when you look behind those risks, what you see is a connection among them. You see certain nodes that if we can intervene at those nodes, we have an amplification effect to attenuate risk across a suite of different risks. And so this is a good way for us to think, where should we apply our energies, our interventions, our solutions to drive progress across multiple fronts by intervening at one or more of those risk nodes. If we look back last year, the word that kind of came through the Global Risks Report was bleak. You know, there was a sense of declining optimism, conflict, mis and disinformation, a real sense of disruption. Disruption across a whole suite of fronts. I mean, we've just come out of COVID. We're still, in many parts of the world, emerging from that global pandemic. We had a sense that 2025 was the kind of year across the globe of elections with big transitions across many nation states. And I mentioned trust. You know, this sense of trust being lost in some of our established spaces, whether that's the media, whether that's formal religion, whether that's even in places like my own, like universities. And then the year before, when we looked at 2024, there was this sense of climate and conflict, but critically, they called out the need for hope and the room for hope. And I think hope is a powerful fuel for progress. We have to feel that there is betterment ahead of us and that we can collectively and individually drive towards betterment. And so I really want to focus there and bring this construct of fairness, a fairer society, as being a goal for today, and explore with you a range of pathways to progress but bring those pathways to life through the voice of a whole suite of global leaders and thought leaders. So I am the goal advisor to Emerald, which is a publishing house, and they've organized their content around a suite of kind of SDG led. They are an SDG compact publisher. And one of those areas is a fairer society. How do we drive towards a fairer society? And I think that sits really comfortably with the idea of social progress. So creating a society that's fair and inclusive, where there's access to healthcare, education, technology, justice, social protection, work, good housing and peace. That kind of captures the ambition really for what does a fairer society look like. And over these past number of years, we've taken a number of missions and gone deep into those missions and invited a whole range of global thought leaders to give their views about a range of topics. So just give you some insight to some of those, and the links to going away and reading some of those blogs and vlogs, the video blogs. We took a contentious issue of should billionaires exist, and had a fantastic debate about addressing the unequal growth and wealth inequality, as well as the opportunity that billionaires have to invest and shape social progress through philanthropy. We looked at quality of life as something that isn't just about surviving, but how do we thrive and release the human potential of everybody. We looked at the role of volunteerism and how people are contributing their discretionary time, if they have discretionary time, to drive as a volunteer towards a fairer society. We looked at living cities, thinking about how do we build a better future, recognizing the move to urbanization. Some of our other missions, I think this is moving out. Okay, this is moving a little fast. Yeah, so some of our other missions have looked at trust. So that construct of how does trust as a fuel actually drive a fairer society. We looked at fairness across those generational distances, across 5 generations. How do we steward from one generation to another? We looked at the whole concept of stewardship and human flourishing and the future of work. So we've taken a deep dive across a whole range of different topics. Many of those are related directly to social progress. Many of them actually relate to how do we deliver fairness. Now, the mission that we're currently working on, which will be released very, very soon, and is what I want to really focus my time on here, is how do we make pathways to progress as part of delivering a fairer society. So what I want to do is really give you an insight into some of the thought leaders that we've curated for this mission. Many of them are actually here in the session with us, so we'll be able to have a discussion with them at the end, and give you some insights from their blogs and their thinking. So the first cohort is from a group that I had the pleasure of working with here at Rutgers University Mandela Washington Fellows. Many of them have contributed to some of the previous missions under a fairer society. And they each took a topic that mattered to them as a pathway towards progress and this sense of fairness. So our first contributor, fabulous Chipo, great to have you here, took the topic of fast fashion and asked a very provocative question: at what cost to progress? So really took that construct of being able to order something online, to be able to pick up something, to move something, but took a deeper, thoughtful view about how are we looking at this in the construct of progress? At what cost? Because we're polluting the land, the air, the water, and putting pressure on our land. And actually, this is not what progress looks like. And so Chipo really went deep into this subject and talked about at what cost. Yes, we have, increase in production and sales. Yes, we're creating employment and there's a contribution to shared prosperity, but at what cost was the question. And it's something that we might want to talk about at the end. One of our other Mandela Fellows, Simon, looked at the architecture of a shared future. Harnessing that human potential that leaves no one behind, that outcome measure of the SDGs. And so really called for us to start building what he calls an awakened society, and saw education as a great intervention point where we drive fairness and progress, social progress with education as the fuel, but that intervention node to drive progress. So really thoughtful ideas from Simon. And then Rosabelle, who I think is also with us, another Mandela Fellow, talked about designing from the margins what the small islands can teach us about inclusive progress. And really felt that when women and small island contexts are sidelined, there is a version of progress, but it's incomplete. There are voices and context left out of the discussion. And called on us to remind ourselves that progress is really shaped by those who get to participate. So progress, genuine social progress, relies on inclusive participation. And also called out something really important, and that is that innovation is happening at the margins. Innovation is being driven by many of those who are being left behind. And we are therefore leaving behind the innovation and the accelerators that they are uncovering for us. So I think a very thoughtful piece from Rosabelle. We also invited a group of global academics to give us some insights. Two of them I wanted to call out in particular. So the former president of the University of Pretoria, Tawana Coupe, who talked about the importance of university partnerships to addressing these global challenges and called on us to remove barriers so that we could take the knowledge and the knowledge networks within universities and enable them to be joined together really for that mutual benefit. And that rather than in universities and colleges of higher education acting in silos, acting collectively so that we can provide that access to the knowledge that they hold and produce. And Tawana Coupe is also the editor of one of the books in the Series I series edit, which is Higher Education SDGs, and he looked after Higher Education and SDG 4 and curated a whole suite of global examples about what universities and colleges of higher education can do to accelerate delivery of SDG 4 through their actions. A second academic then is Karen Cripps, who looked at green pathways. And recognizing, I think, this disruption in work is talking about workers who are in danger of being left behind and calling out for an investment in green skills, technical, transferable, transformative, and that will provide some level of progress to enable equal access. And seeing this as a critical pathway to social progress. And Karen, along with a colleague, is also an editor of Higher Education, the SDG book, and she looked after Higher Education and SDG 2. So a very interesting, again, a suite of curated examples. And those books, many of them are open access, so free to download. I think there's 9 or 10 of them in the series now, and obviously there will be ultimately 17, one on each of the SDGs. Then we also looked at the youth voice and brought in a group of PhD students and those who are undertaking deep inquiry. So BK did a fantastic blog looking at pathways to progress around the next generation and how we invest in them for sustainable growth. And again, called out for the inclusivity of our systems and that resilience and investment in our younger generations. And I think specifically mentioned the importance of mental health and mental well-being, and how we can encourage and enable civic engagement for our youth, to bring them in to spaces and help them influence our next steps as we make those steps towards betterment. And then a second PhD student is also an academic, is Juan, who looked at the economic pressures and the health risks and took a deep dive into Japan, thinking about how do we progress a more inclusive society when we also have a kind of maturing society and a technologically advanced society, and really recognized, and I think many of us do, is that sense of health and well-being should be about not just growth but inclusion, and calling on us to share progress so that genuinely we do not leave people behind. And then the last kind of group of thought leaders are those who work across the globe, so global thought leaders who have some really interesting perspectives and context matters here. So I want to introduce you to Lawrence. I think Lawrence is also here with us today, who really asked us to think again about the extractive sector as a pathway to progress, and really saying that there are some strategies, yes, that might be providing some level of benefit, but they are causing more harm than good. And really, I think, left us with some deep thinking about how the pursuit of social progress should not be narrowly focused on these economic gains that benefit the few, but there should be a greater attention to redistributive mechanisms. And so we can explore that in the discussion with Lawrence. One of our own IPSP members, Bulani, talks about the benefits of digital sovereignty, really leaning into the disruptions about AI, but calls out some difficult questions as we look at skills and power and value and how that's showing up in Africa's move to technology and embrace technology. And really, I think, asked some very difficult questions when we're looking at social progress. One was about that there is a deliberate, by default, strategic dependency emerging when external actors are investing in the continent of Africa, and yet they're creating a strategic dependency where internal systems are not being built up. And places, and you know, quoting him directly, places like Kenya are positioning workers, yes, in employment, but they are really doing the lower level, he used the term janitorial staff of AI, lower level work that relates to cleaning and sorting and sustaining data systems whose value they don't control. And that this, you know, at one level, there may be a level of progress, but at what cost? Creating these levels of dependency and calling for us to look again at what these pathways to progress are actually delivering. Manuel moves us forward with Jamie working in Spain at UPM University, thinking about the ecological risks when we think about who is benefiting from progress. We're seeing this already around climate exposures, disruptions, actually amplifying the uneven equity that we have in our system. So really asking those questions again, who's really benefiting? Are there inequities that are being revealed in new ways? And inviting us really to question what we mean by progress. What are we moving towards, and with whom are we making that journey? So some powerful, provocative questions that I think can inform our discussion. We also had another global thought leader, Malika, who talked about the pathway to progress is system integration, why inclusion alone is not enough. And so is critical, I think, as some of the narrative that talks about women's participation in peace and security discussions, but inclusion is treated as an add-on rather than a foundational aspect. And so similar to, I think, Rosabel's comments, that progress is not defined by presence, but by impact. We really need to see who's at the table, how their voices are being heard, and inviting more women into these systems requires us to reimagine and rethink these systems. And so comes up with an integrated peace and security framework, which I think is very compelling. And then a couple of other ones I wanted just to highlight for you. One is about how do we move our thinking beyond the kind of surviving into a thriving, into flourishing, a genuine idea of human flourishing. And so when we talk about leaving no one behind, this sense of fairness, we want to leave no one behind because they have the ability to flourish, to genuinely uplift their full human potential into society. And so Jim and Brandon talk about global flourishing goals, which can move us maybe alongside the Sustainable Development Goals and move us from sustainability to human flourishing. And then the last global thought leader I wanted just to introduce you to is Manuel, who talks about the importance of action, that there is a gap between what we say and what we do, that our current lack of progress in many areas is not about lack of ideas, it's about lack of execution, and is really calling on us to move from storytelling to story doing, and that the future really belongs to those of us who do. So that's quite a big kind of number of ideas I've put in front of us there from those global thought leaders, from our Mandela Fellows, from people who are PhD students expanding the kind of remit of our thinking, and asking some deep questions that we might want to turn our minds to as part of social progress. Because when we're thinking about a move to fairness, to get from here to there, there is a sense, I think, when we talk about social progress, that we are talking about betterment. We're saying what will move us from here to there, what will provide the kind of quality of life, the human flourishing, the conditions where people's needs, basic and aspirational, can be met. You know, what will it take, I think, to move us from here to there? What's helping us? What are the accelerators? What are the amplifiers? What's getting in the way? And I think all of those speakers, all of those thought leaders are giving us some insight into what's helping, but also what's getting in the way. What do we need to do more of? What do we need to fix? And there's a really interesting construct when we think about the kinds of social progress problems. We can divide them into, I think, two basic camps. We can divide them into those that are technical issues, and those that are adaptive. And I think this is an important thing for us to spend just a moment on. Where we have a technical problem, a technical issue, we actually have the answers. We have the solutions. We can set out plans and mandates and policies. We can apply funding and other resources to it. They are complicated questions, but we are in a position of knowing. And it really then underscores Manuel's comments about this is then a failure of execution. It's about the doing is where we are getting in our own way. But there is a contrast to some of the other questions that I think some of these writers and speakers have identified for us that are known as adaptive These are adaptive challenges where we don't have the answers. Sometimes we don't even have the questions. We have to learn our way in. There are a suite of fears, identities. There are power relationships. There are socio-historical contexts that we need to navigate. So there is a real contrast that we do not have the answers to some of these adaptive questions and adaptive issues. We have to learn our way in. We have to innovate. That's why that comment, I think, from Rosabelle around innovation that's happening now at the margins, can we learn from that? Can we recognize the experiments that are happening in real time because of cause and actually learn our way in and amplify those? So this distinction between technical issues that are standing in our way, complicated, but we have the answers if only we have the will to apply, versus complex issues, adaptive challenges, where we actually need to learn our way in. And I see in some of the work, well-meaning work in social progress, we have been applying technical fixes to what are effectively adaptive complexity questions and vice versa. We need to rethink how we think about social progress. And I think articulate those pathways which are technical, i.e. we have knowledge and we simply need execution power, and those that are really adaptive, where we need to experiment and innovate and learn our way in. And that's the way that we can, I think, make progress in terms of fairness and social progress. And so when I talked at the beginning about VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, we can meet those VUCA conditions with VUCA. We can meet it with vision, a vision about what that direction, what social progress looks like, what fairness feels like, the perception of fairness, as well as the structural and actuality of fairness. We can meet uncertainty with understanding, a deeper understanding of the issue at hand. Is it an adaptive issue that we really need to listen and learn? Are there voices that are unheard, unseen, not even present in the debate? So we need to deepen our understanding. Can we provide more clarity to address that sense of complexity? Can we communicate better, collaborate better, identify shared purpose? And can we have that agility that it takes to meet the ambiguity? Can we pivot as needed through learning, through experimentation, through reflection? So meeting VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, with VUCA, vision, understanding, clarity, agility, is a way that we can make progress towards betterment and fairness. So there's a call here to bridge the gap between knowing there's an issue, I think we know there's an issue, to caring. I think many of us care, and very deeply, but can we bridge then to doing, and doing so in a way that is intelligent, that we know that we are addressing a technical issue by applying known solutions, or knowing that we are addressing an adaptive issue where we're learning our way in. And so just as we finish, I wanted to introduce you to this model, which I really like. It's like that head, heart and hand, in a sense, is how do we recognize the rational, analytical work that's going on, that we're able to persuade and influence, but at a cognitive level. I think we're pretty good at that. We're able to write white papers, write academic reports, policy reports, very, very analytical. That's great. I think we're good at that. I think where we're less good is actually getting underneath and appealing to the emotions and the heart that it takes to shift and move us towards social progress. So the kinds of issues that have socio-historical context, the fears, the identity, the power imbalances, that's where we need to get better and smarter at understanding the emotions and the heart when we're talking about progress and leaving no one behind. And then actually helping us shape the path. Can we tweak the environment? Can we build habits? Can we support the culture that means that the right thing to do, the thing that takes us towards fairness, the thing that takes us towards social progress is the easier thing to do, as opposed to trying to introduce this new way of doing and being into an established system. So that rider-elephant path switch, how to make change when change is hard, and we're talking about hard change, is a very interesting model. And I think it fits really well with that adaptive technical agenda. And then just to kind of conclude really with some final thoughts, what if we don't do anything? We can't just sit and wish that something magical is going to happen. We are seeing deterioration. We are seeing people being left behind. We are seeing new agendas like AI and generative AI and other disruptions leaving people behind. We're seeing an exacerbation of vulnerabilities because of climate and ecological degradation. We have to make some decisions. We have to come together in the way that we're doing here to think through some of these issues. We want to bring some more voices to this space, and I just want to highlight very briefly something that myself and Yonette are doing, which is launching with Emerald a new journal, an international journal for social progress. We want to bring in new voices. We want to bring in new ideas, new thinking in the way that I've done here from global thought leaders. So that's forthcoming. We're also taking through the university a deeper dive into sustainability and health in the broad context and launching a new master's in sustainability and health. So my thoughts really here are to invite you into this curated space that Yonette is holding and moderating for us, to share your reflections, to share your insights. For those who are in the room, who I featured some extracts from your blogs, I'd invite you to come to stage and expand on any of those thoughts. I also want us to, maybe in the chat, just give us a word for today. I think mine's going to be hope. I think hope is a fuel. Hope is something that we as leaders thrive on and need to deliver. So I want to thank you very much for your attention. I specifically want to thank Yonette for the invitation here to speak and be part of this incredible series. And I'm going to hand back to Yonette for her moderation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wendy. This has been amazing. And before we bring the others on stage, I want to say that your talk is coming at a really good point. We're just over the halfway point of this seminar series. And we have 4 or 5 more coming up. And I want to remind people who will be looking at this video, watching this video, and who are in the audience, that this seminar series is part of the Working Group on Human Security, Public Health, and Population Wellbeing, is the work of that group within the IPSP. I particularly want to mention active members like Dr. Greg Williams and Dr. Mabel Kapenda, who I see in the audience, and also mention that Dr. Kapenda is herself a Mandela Washington Fellow. So that would be wonderful in the discussion. And to bring to attention the remaining seminars coming up, we sadly wrap up on August 13th, but we do have next week's seminar will be on transformational education and knowledge facilitation, which is showing an organization, the International Center of Humanity, how they're actually implementing this whole notion of fairness and how it involves education broadly. After that, we have a look at adaptation, activism, a critical analysis of the 15-minute city and how restorative urbanism for mental health planning is so integral, and using the context of an Indian city to show this, particularly under climate uncertainty. Following that, we have Jaromíra Harmacek, who will talk to us about data collected, the Social Progress Index. He's part of the Social Progress Imperative, a very instrumental group in helping us to track issues related to social progress. Next, we have a look at outcomes in ethical leadership using the COVID-19 scenario as a process for eradicating gender-based violence in developing contexts. And we wrap up. We started with Professor Condretti at the Richard Fairbanks School of Public Health in Indiana, and we will wrap up with him. He is an expert from Bruyere in Canada on international health regulations for global health security. So I encourage everyone in this session and those listening in to join with us and to continue this discussion. It's intended to stimulate and to spawn broader discussions and other activities. So again, Wendy, thank you for those insightful comments and thoughts. And I ask Bokanjo to invite our audience, everyone in the audience. I see Dr. Williams, Lawrence Makure, Dr. Kipenda, Mark Flurbe, and Rosalie Mederick. If you would join us on stage, please, so that we can have a discussion.
So Rosa Bell was one of these blog writers and thinkers that I featured. So I'm very, very delighted if Rosa Bell would like to say something. And also Lawrence, I also featured your excellent blog. So if you have comments or anything you want to expand upon, please.
And I really want to thank Dr. Margot Thomas for really giving us the energy and using her organization's resources to have Joseph Bokanjo as an amazing technical support in this process. We couldn't have done it without it. And her brainchild is this platform that we're in, the Kaltura platform. So we're very fortunate. I don't know if she is around, but Dr. Margot, thank you very much. So let's join the stage. Do we have more people joining? Dr. Kipenda, Rosalie, are you able to join? We'll just give you a minute or so, 30 seconds to get you up on stage. There you go. I see people coming on. Okay, wonderful.
Hi,
so the way we do this seminar series is, rules. Put your hand up. You have a question, a comment, a statement. This is the time. And we have about another 30 minutes or so to engage in discussion. So who would like to go first? I hate to be a professor in the classroom. So Rosalie, forgive me. I'll call on you. What are some of your thoughts? You heard Dr. Purcell, and you've been part of her work. Share thoughts, ideas, question.
Yeah, I just wanted to expand a little bit about my experience here in the Seychelles. Historically, we know that architecture has always been a male-dominated field, and as women, especially operating for a very small island state, it has its challenges, and because of, I guess, our size, you can feel it a little bit more compared to the rest of the world. So you find you have to be bold in putting forward your ideas and just putting in the work twice as much as your other colleagues, just in order to be heard or to be represented properly, and also to make space and a way for the younger generations, which I find is crucial, which some of my work in mentoring the youth with the Seychelles National Youth Council, I do with them here, and also working with the Seroptimus, which is a women-led organization, also dealing with young women and girls. So from that standpoint, and my personal experience as well in the field, that's why I feel strongly about it. And also relating to my experience in the US last year, where I was placed in Ohio at an architecture firm, I find that it was a very eye-opening experience in the sense that progression has been quite apparent compared to small island states in the bigger context, in terms of like more inclusion, female inclusion, that is, and there's a bigger space, or there has been the creation of space for us to be heard and ideas valued. So there is that progress. I'm not saying that there hasn't been, but globally there is. But maybe small island nations which are on the margin, it takes a bit longer because people are more stuck in the way of doing things and maybe a particular culture, value sets. So, and also we see dealing with government officials, for example, or just like bureaucracy takes a bit longer because people have a different type of mindset or less reluctance to accept like the digital age, for example. So I think that barrier also adds to this like reluctance for progression. But we are getting there slowly. We are seeing change, even though it's at a slower pace. So yeah, that's my views on the topic. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that, Rosalie. One of the things, particularly in this working group, and the way I structured it, was to really get at the multi-sectoral aspects of this. Change occurs in small bits, but it has to be simultaneous at multiple levels. And the reason I bring that up, you mentioned the infrastructure and local governments, etc. One of the things I'm seeing in my own work and my talks around the world is engaging local, subnational, national, and regional and global as well. And particularly in small island nations, I come from the Caribbean, so I fully understand. One has to, and I see this in my work in Kenya and Uganda and in South America itself, engaging municipal leaders is a game changer, because oftentimes they're significant decision makers at that level, but the discussion, they're never engaged in making the change. And they're impacted from the community at the local level. So we involve the community leadership and the county council and the local village leadership, but they influence the municipal directors and leaders who then influence the national. So one food for thought, as you do that work, you may think of who are the instrumental players at those levels that you can include in your thinking, and you'd be surprised. They often say, well, this is great, you have these ideas, but tell me how to take it back to the local community. Just food for thought as you do your excellent work. Thank you for that. Greg, Mark, Lawrence, comments, thoughts, questions?
I don't mind. Oh, sorry. I think Mark.
Hi, Greg.
I was going to say I don't mind sharing a few thoughts.
Yes, of course.
Sorry, my camera's not plugged in, so you can just.
No worries.
Thanks for that, Wendy. It's interesting seeing all the different work that's going on, and you're explaining some of the complexities going forward. And what it made me think of quite a lot is about you saying, how do we move on to the doing? And one of the things we often find when we work with communities and things like that there are a lot of academics and local authorities who think they're doing the doing, but they're not actually doing the doing, and they're certainly not from the perspective of people in particular communities. And it can be difficult to persuade someone that they're not doing what they think they're doing. And I wonder if you had any thoughts on how we get around that, because we have this issue around trust, and lots of people like to look outwardly as to why we've lost that trust and not bring in the fact that we have lost.
I think it's a very important question, because I think too long we've seen those who are in some of the established kind of institutions that you've called out, whether it's local authorities or universities or whatever, that have a sense of we know best, we know the answer, we discern this problem as being your problem. And what they haven't done is worked in community to co-create and articulate what the actual problems are. One of the groups that are doing it really well are the university UPM that's based in Madrid, and I featured, I think, a couple of their academics, and what they've done is they've created what's known as a second operating system, which is out with the university, out with municipal leaders, as Yonette was saying. There is a third space where community, big business, small business, civic leaders, municipal kind of local politicians come together in a third space, which is genuinely the rules of engagement, the power relationships, the sense of joined up doing, as Manuel called us to do, is palpable, and they are making real progress. So they're looking for the agenda that cross among all of those spaces and articulating how do we move forward in a way that is inviting people to define what good looks like, as opposed to doing the kind of telling people what they think they need. And I think that maturing of relationships, that sort of flatter structure in some ways, but it's a genuine space of co-creation. And so there's a couple of those examples that have been written up. What governance does it take? What facilitation does it take? What resources does it take? And is it peculiar to that environment, or is it something that we can scale? And I think the answers are yes, there are some ways of making it happen, and it is scalable. And so I don't think it's the full answer, but I think it genuinely points to how we've got it so wrong. You know, well-meaning people doing well-meaning things, but just missing the mark in the way that you described. But that kind of second operating system and creating that third space is a way that those individual leaders from their different organizations can create a new identity, which genuinely is then driven by the collective as opposed to any one of the parts.
Excellent. We'd love to hear from you, Lawrence. You were featured in Wendy's talk. Share some comments, questions.
Thanks, Yonette and Wendy. Okay, so I did contribute a piece to Wendy. My piece was discussing a Zimbabwean perspective on progress, which is mostly associated as economic progress, right? And because of the abundance of mineral resources, the government is now leveraging the extractive sector to drive the much needed economic progress. And while this has been celebrated as contributing in generating the much needed revenue for the state, what's worrying us is the communities where these mining activities are happening are not really benefiting much, right? They are now not safe, they are hopeless, and their rights are continuously being violated. So by writing this piece, I was trying to challenge all concerned stakeholders to reconsider our approach to mining, and also to ensure that it's contributing to social progress in the communities where it's happening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And maybe you could say a little bit more, Lawrence, about how that's working, and what are some of the feedback you're getting as a result of the work you're doing from the community, from the leaders, the co-creation aspects.
Well, the response is quite encouraging, because the communities are in need of this support, and also community leaders, the local authorities, they are willing to support in these engagements. So I would say it's very encouraging. We are just starting. I think we are 1 year now into the work, but we are hoping for more to happen in the next coming years.
Wonderful. So I assume you will keep Wendy busy with a second series showing impact, right? Right, Wendy? To be next?
For sure.
Yes,
For sure.
yes.
For sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I see. Yeah, that would be amazing. I see Chipo has joined the audience, and if we can get Chipo on the stage, Chipo,
Great.
if you can allow yourself to be put on the stage, that would be wonderful. Mark, I see you there. We have not heard from you. Give us some insight, some thoughts. Did this stimulate any particular question or comment from you?
Yes, thank you. First, let me congratulate you for this series and for this very interesting session, as well as for the launch of the new journal. This is all fantastic initiatives, and it's very nice that you bring all these voices to the conversation. This is really fantastic. I was really intrigued by the distinction between the technical context and the adaptive context, as I wrote in the chat. And the way we've been usually framing the situation in IPSP groups is to say it looks like we have pretty precise ideas about what would be good institutions for the economy, for the society, for the political system. We have relatively precise ideas, at least of reforms, maybe not a fully defined ideal society, but at least the direction in which we should be going. And so it looks like this is almost like a technical issue, but in fact it's not, because we are facing political headwinds, power obstacles, and so the real issue is actually how to deal with these obstacles that are tremendous, and we don't really have the solution to that. And so I would be very interested in hearing Wendy on how to deal with this complicated and complex situation at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, and that's always the danger by saying, you know, this type of problem and this type of problem, and then we do the both and, because most of them are in that both and that's why I combined it with that sort of the switch model, because you're absolutely right, many of the issues are technical. We know the answers, we have the fix, but the adaptive piece that is creating the drag factor or the lack of delivery is because we have failed to investigate the power relations, the socio-historic context, the disruptions, the vested interests, you know, so that's the bit that would be the enabler of the technical solutions to happen, but we haven't done the investment in deepening our understanding about some of those barriers, in a sense, which we could frame. And I think you're doing that framing. We could frame those as they're the bits that we need to learn more about. That's the adaptive part of that challenge. We have the fixes, we could do the solutions, yeah, but unraveling some of the systems and the vested power relationships and the context or the culture or some of the socio-historical context, we really have very little understanding about how that's showing up. And so sometimes then shows up as resistance or false starts. You know, it's happening, but we're not really getting behind what would it take to enable this technical solution to happen. We have to get into some of that messier stuff, which is in the adaptive space. So most of the issues that we're facing are kind of a both and, but the adaptive piece is in that deeper, messier kind of people stuff about how change really happens and the compassion that it takes to affect change, the losses sometimes that are involved in some of these changes. And some of these losses are about power and relationships, and so, you know, so there's some very big losses there that we need to acknowledge. And so this draws very heavily on Ronald Heifetz's work at the Harvard Kennedy School, who really framed the whole kind of adaptive leadership model. But I think putting that model together with the switch, there's some very interesting insights which give us maybe some new ways of thinking into how we might tackle some of these, you know, these growing problems, not just problems that we're, you know, tackling right now. There are new ones emerging. So yeah. Oh, so Chippo's not able to use that audio, but we did feature you, Chippo, and it's wonderful to have you here. And thank you for your deep thinking about fast fashion. I appreciate that.
And perhaps, Chippo, you can put a question or a comment in the chat. I'm happy to read it. In the meantime, Wendy, we've got 3 words. We've got perseverance from Rosabelle. We've got positivity from Dr. Kapenda, who has had to run off to another meeting. And we've got hope from you. So how will you ring fence those 3 words into, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very uplifting to sit in a room with people who are literally at the
apologies, Wendy.
Edge.
Apologies. Yeah. Mark just added courage.
Courage. Okay. Well, that's even better. Courage. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's incredibly uplifting. You know, when I talk about, you know, what we do here matters, coming together like this in community is a way of uplifting and kind of fueling ourselves for the fight and for the work that we do. So seeing people who are genuinely at the edges of pushing social progress, the way that we're describing, and I featured a number of speakers there, but to hear them then use words like courage and perseverance and positivity, that shows you that sheer determination that it takes to make a difference here. We know the prize on the other side, you know, what it would feel like, look like, be like if we genuinely had social progress, if we genuinely had fairness. And so that, I think, is what's fueling us. It can sometimes feel like you're the only one thinking like that. It can sometimes feel exhausting to continue to have the right answers and not to be able to get them done or through. So to come together like this in community, facilitated by you and by Margot and Joseph, is, I think, a great way to fill us up again, and to, you know, to bring together that kind of fuel of hope and courage and positivity and perseverance. So that's how I would put it together. And it's a way of like taking away from a session like this, you know, a kind of, okay, I'm on the right path. I'm on a pathway to progress in the way that we've been describing here. And that prize on the other side is something really, really worth fighting for. So it's great to have those uplifting words. So thank you.
Yes,
to
indeed.
Mark and everyone else. So yeah.
And I also want to say,
yours?
Wendy, you know, I'm so busy moderating that I didn't get a chance to think of it. But however, my word is probably a call to action. For everyone on this call, Wendy and I have co-founded and are co-editors of this amazing journal. And the whole point of that, starting up that journal, is to uplift these ideas like this. And from research papers to thought leadership pieces, to practitioner-led, action-oriented, here's what we're doing on the ground, to commentaries. So my word is challenge. I would like to see each of you submit a piece for the inaugural issue. We're in the process of defining that, but those of you who know Wendy, get in touch. Wendy, my challenge is, each one of the people you featured in this Mandela, they have something to share. We should do this and have their work featured and showing this broader link, the multisectoral aspects, and how you engage, the co-creation you talked about. And maybe subsequently we will see some impacts. So that would be my call to action. It's more than a word. It's sort of opportunistic, taking advantage of what we have and getting it out into the broader world in multiple ways. What we're doing here today, what we're doing with the seminar series, the publications, etc. So that would be my call to action for more work, but good work.
Good work. Yeah.
Yes.
Good work.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead. Go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to underscore, you know, your call really, because unless we bring in the diversity of voices and we provide different ways of conveying those experiences and insights, like the journal, you know, we're going to miss out. And so I think that's what's been so powerful about the seminar series, is bringing different voices. And that's what I think can be so powerful about the journal and beyond. So thank you very much for that call to action. We'll take it on.
Yes. And I want to thank you again, Wendy. I just love working with you. Where we have this synergy, and together we're able to do what we're doing. And I want to thank you again for such a thoughtful talk, and integral to disseminating what we're trying to do. And I want to thank the audience members for taking the time. And just to say, while it's a time zone issue, Greg's in the UK, Mark's in Paris, Rosabelle is in Seychelles, Lawrence is in Kenya. We have a range of people from around the world. Wendy and I just happen to be in the US in different states. Bokanjo, our technical person, is doing this from the Cameroon. So we are really literally a village. And because of that, the time zone issue, not everybody gets a chance to come in real time. But what we're seeing is people are going back and reviewing the series, and so that's spawning, because it's Dr. Margot, I think she has a process where she puts it right into YouTube, and so it gets into the sinews. More people have access to it. So I encourage you to tell others about it, and they can go find it on YouTube, and share it around, so we can get more people thinking and engaging, adding comments in the future. So again, I want to thank you, Wendy. I want to thank everyone who joined, and please join us next week for another in the seminar series. Thank you all.